What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Once again, another still worth the video. I'm still kind of under the weather, so please excuse my nasal congestions if I cough, but that's all going to be edited out anyway. But we're going to be taking a look at another phone that actually probably brought one of the biggest shifts from going from one iPhone to the other, and that's actually the iPhone 5. This iPhone brought a ton of stuff to the table. This was the first time that we saw the lightning port, first time we saw a bigger screen size, a different kind of body style as well, and numerous of other things. So we're going to kind of run through it. And at a time, I think it was like 2017, I was still kind of recommending people to use an iPhone 5 if they wanted to, mostly because iOS 10.3.3 at the time was actually pretty decent. And I don't think it's necessarily that case anymore because more and more apps are getting demanding. This phone isn't like the latest and greatest anymore, but it still kind of has some value in it for sure. And I think the iPhone 5 is one of the better iPhones, or at least the better lasting iPhones that definitely came out within the last 10 years or so. Now, first of all, this thing was released in 2012, so this thing will be turning 8 years old this year, which is pretty crazy. It just feels like yesterday this thing was announced even, but even when this thing was announced, I didn't even own it. I had I think a Nexus 4 at the time, I don't really remember, but looking at the front, you have a 4-inch IPS panel. That resolution is 640 by 1136. And what's funny is that this same resolution is kind of still, rolled over to the iPhone SE. This whole entire phone body, the iPhone SE's whole entire body was stemmed from the original iPhone 5 design. So there's still a lot going for it for sure. You can definitely see that there's quite a bit of bezel on it. Especially on the white version, I have the black one, but on the white one, you can see all the black holes and everything. And the black one seems to be a lot more sleek, which I do like. You have a home button on the bottom, which I think everyone already knows that. No fingerprint sensor on it, so you're kind of already outdated. On the bottom, we have a lightning port. We also have a headphone jack on this phone as well, which is super cool. A lot of people, they still don't want to go over it, but we have that capability here. And the lightning port on this phone, you cannot just brush it over, dude. Every single iPhone since this iPhone's release has used a lightning port, which is crazy to hear. Think about all those iPhones that have came out now, the iPhone 11s, the 11 Pros, the 10Ss, all those things all use that same lightning port that came out in 2012 on the iPhone 5. Now I want you to keep this in mind. How many phones from 2012 were using USB Type-C? I don't think really any iPhone or any phone at the time was using USB Type-C. They were all using micro USB, or probably even that other micro USB port. However, imagine if phones nowadays were to still use that micro USB port. That'd be crazy, right? However, nobody really thinks twice about the lightning port. Apple has been using that for so long, and I think it's held up very well. So this thing at least has that, which is really cool. On the back, we have a single camera setup, and overall, what I can tell you, the feeling of this phone in the hand, this phone still feels like a very, very good phone. Obviously, it's kind of, it has some bezel on it, so it doesn't look like the latest and greatest, but for sure, I think in terms of the way it feels in the hand, it still feels like a very premium phone. And even though the internals might be a little different, the external still has held up quite well, throughout the years that it's been released. So that kind of covers that up in terms of the outside. There's no IP certification, there's nothing like that. But luckily, parts to repair this phone are super cheap, so you can easily go and fix whatever you want in this phone to be set. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the outside. Now hitting on the software, this thing was released with iOS 6, which, if you remember, that was pretty much, some people claim it to be like the best version of iOS. I wouldn't really, say it that far. I think it was, pretty good. It was very smooth at the time, but then this thing eventually got iOS 7, which, did kind of mess up some things here and there. We are luckily able to upgrade it to iOS 10.3.3, but last year we got a random update for this phone, which was iOS 10.3.4. So that was super crazy. This phone just randomly out of nowhere. I don't even think Apple really, made a newsroom thing about it or anything like that. They literally just pushed the update, which is so crazy. And they did the same thing with the iPhone 4S as well. And that's just a testament to Apple's software cycle life system. They're just willing to keep updating phones, whether you like it or not. Some people might not like iOS 9.3 whatever on the iPhone 4S, but this phone has that capability. But this phone really goes to show that, A, it's still getting updates. Apple is such a G for doing that, but B, there's still a lot of people, or a majority of people still using an iPhone 5 that Apple felt needed to actually push that update. It was pretty much a critical one. Like nowadays, if an iPhone 3G exploit came out, which I'm pretty sure there's already one, I don't think Apple would actually go and push an update for it. I think they would just claim it, okay, whatever, nobody uses that phone, or they would look at their data and see is anybody even using this phone, and move on. This one, Apple saw it, they saw that people are probably still using it, and I think that's a pretty crazy thing. So in terms of software, you're pretty much outdated. but it did get an update last year, which is pretty surprising. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of that. Hitting on the performance real quick, this thing was released with the Apple A6 chip, a dual-core CPU, and there were 3 different models of the iPhone 5, a 16, 32, and 64GB model, and all these models had 1GB of RAM, and this was actually the first iPhone to bring 1GB of RAM, and we didn't even get a RAM increase until 2015 when the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus came out. So this iPhone, it doubled the RAM coming from an iPhone 4S, and I do think, like, when I say this, I think it's really important. I think this iPhone really has the same speed per se as the iPhone 5S, even though my benchmark scores and everything haven't really, showcased that. Whenever I use them side by side, whenever I open things, whatever, I usually get around the same, app opening speeds and everything. I might do another comparison here and soon just to kind of mess with it, but I would say in terms of performance, it's pretty much what you expect. It's pretty slow across the board. It takes a long time to open apps. It's on iOS 10, so some apps aren't compatible per se, and if they are compatible, you're going to have to download some older versions of those apps, but it's not as bad as something like a device on iOS 9, so if you're in 2020, it's definitely going to be it's not going to be the best thing ever. Like I said, you're missing out on a lot of those cool features, let alone the security updates, so those little updates here and there sometimes do improve the speed of your phone, and because this phone is a little older, it's not necessarily using the latest chipset, so whenever I'm opening apps, even if it's like the App Store for example, it is noticeably slow. I don't want to hate on it too much. It brought a lot to the table, but looking at it now in 2020 and trying to be as unbiased as possible, it's definitely a slow phone. But what I will say is that I've owned a lot of other phones from 2012. I think the Galaxy S2 came out in 2012. Some other HTC phones I've owned in 2012, all that stuff. All those phones do not hold up as well in terms of the speed and performance as the iPhone 5. So yes, this phone is slow, but all 2012 iPhones, looking back at it now, are pretty much slower than the iPhone 5. So that's just a testament to the longevity of the iPhones. Yes, temporarily those phones probably were faster, but now I would say the iPhone 5 is still faster overall. So I would tell you in terms of performance, the iPhone 5 I think definitely still holds up quite well. It's a smooth experience, it's just not the fastest experience, if that makes any sense. So time to hit on the camera. This thing has a single 8 megapixel camera on the back and a 1.2 megapixel front facing camera. Now that back camera, you're able to shoot 1080p videos, no 4K, no nothing like that, no 60 frames per second on any resolution as far as I know. And what I can tell you is like, dude, it's not that bad of a camera still. Like, I think it's held up quite well, and I've been saying this for a lot of iPhones. There's just not a lot to hate on it because you're kind of already expecting it to not be the best. I mean, for one, you can't shoot 4K videos, no 60 frames at any resolution, so that's already kind of a downside. But B, it doesn't have those ultra-wide sensors, telephoto lenses, anything like that. So because of that, this kind of camera is already kind of outdated a little bit, obviously. But the quality of the photos, the quality of the videos, as long as you're in decent lighting, it's actually not that bad. Obviously, if you're in horrible lighting, it's not going to be, good at all. I've had my iPhone 11 Pro, and whenever I even use that, in horrible lighting or really kind of shady lighting, it's still not bad. Like, it's not as grainy as I would think. The iPhone 5, if you're in good lighting, it's great, but if you're in bad lighting or even semi-bad lighting, it's definitely not going to look like a good photo. So in terms of camera, that pretty much covers it. Now, ending it off with the battery life, this thing has a 1440 milliamp hour battery, and I do think the battery life is not bad for this type of phone, but what I will tell you is this phone is 8 years old, so it's not going to have, like the full 100% battery health. It's probably degraded, it's probably 100% degraded, because you can't necessarily get this phone brand new anymore, at least in America. I know in some other countries around the world, they still sell the iPhone 5s at some carriers brand new, which is crazy. But in terms of this, your battery life is probably not going to be that great. But what I will tell you is that parts to repair this phone, like I've stated, are pretty cheap. So it doesn't cost that much to replace the battery. If your battery breaks or it's faulty or it's, completely dead, you can go replace it, get the part from eBay and watch a tutorial on how to fix it. And it's really not going to be that hard of a process. So that's one huge advantage of the iPhone 5. Parts to repair the iPhone 5 are super cheap. You can easily go get a screen for it, a camera for it. You can literally rebuild the whole phone if you need to for like $1 if you need to. Okay, totally joking. That's a gross under assumption, but I think at the end of the day, to answer the question, is the iPhone 5 still worth it in 2020? I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna say no. It's obviously not worth it in 2020. The lowest I would go on the iPhone totem pole is the iPhone 6s or the iPhone SE. Those are still being supported. and those are pretty fast. So those are the cheapest phones I would go. But if you currently own an iPhone 5, and if you've been using one for the past month or year or whatever, I would love to know your experience with it. Has it been holding up that well? And what's the reason why you're not updating or upgrading to at least an iPhone 6s? Because I understand if it's a money thing, but the iPhone 6s, you can get for like less than 100. The SEs, I think you can get for less than that too. So I would love to know why you're using the iPhone 5 still, but for every other person watching this, I would not recommend getting an iPhone 5 in 2020. So that pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it would mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.